Welcome back to Social Pulse Podcast, Agency Edition, episode Inspiration, Motivation, and the Perspiration that go into growing and scaling agencies like yours. Now, agencies are built on the expertise and knowledge of their teams, but what if there was a way to turn that expertise into a source of passive income? In an industry where economic ups and downs are inevitable, having a steady stream of revenue from intellectual property can be a game changer. Today, we had the pleasure of speaking with Gini Dietrich, the author of the Spin Sucks book, blog, and podcast. Jeannie is here to share her insights on how agencies can leverage their intellectual property to create structured processes that generate passive income. We'll explore the steps necessary to transform agency knowledge into monetizable assets and how those strategies can provide financial stability during tough times. If you're looking to create new revenue streams and future-proof your agency, this episode is for you. Hey, Jeannie, welcome to the show.
I feel like I should listen to this episode. It's a very good intro.
Me too. I'm going to be taking notes throughout. This is super
to
exciting.
live up to this hype.
Right? So thrilled to have you. Can you start by just telling us first how you kind of came around to this idea of using your own intellectual property to create passive income? I mean, I'll tell you, as a content creator, this is kind of something I've been doing for a while, but it's not so common with agencies.
It's not. It's not so common with a lot of people, I think. The Great Recession was what were my first couple of years in business, which is a really great time to start a business. Kind of like if you started an agency right now, it's not
Right.
ideal, but I think I went into it a little bit naive and not really understanding. And of course, the business was decimated within a year because of the Great Recession. And I had to very quickly learn about the business failures, so to speak, or mistakes of laying off employees and, working with clients because they could no longer honor their contracts, and like going through all of those things that you go through as a business owner, and then figure out how, when something like that were to happen again, that you don't lose, that it doesn't decimate everything, that you don't lose 100% of your revenue. And that really was the genesis of it. And, so I started to think, okay, well, how could we do this? So I co-wrote Marketing in the Round, and I went on the book tour for that, and I learned a lot. And then I solo wrote Spin Sucks, went on the book tour, started speaking, doing a lot of that kind of thing. And as part of that, and Mike, you speak and you're on stage and you're traveling, and it's a lot. And I'm an introvert, so, I didn't have a lot of recharge time, and eventually it got really exhausting. And I thought, I can't keep this up because it's not good for me, my mental health. It's not good for my physical health. It's not good for my needing to recharge health. And so I remember I was sitting at a speaker's dinner at Content Marketing World, and this had to have been probably 2011. And we were talking about online courses, and I had just launched an online course that was, we looked at how to take your content and marry it with media relations. So how do you take the content that you're creating and get journalists to be interested either in you or the company or the thought leaders, the subject matter experts, to include them as sources? And so we launched this course for $199. We sent it out to our subscribers, and granted, we had a nice subscriber base at that point. And we made like $250,000. And I remember sitting at the speaker's dinner, and everyone turned and looked at me like, wait, what? And it was Marcus Sheridan and Ann Hanley and Jay Baer, and like people that know what they're doing. And every single one of them had a story about how they had launched an online course and it failed. And so we talked about, as a group, like what I had done differently to have such great success, and then how I've taken that and launched it into other bigger things, where now it's about 65% of our revenue. So when the pandemic hits and when the world is on fire, like it feels like it is right now, and clients are pulling back on their budgets, or they don't want to sign retainers, or they only want to do projects, whatever happens to be, you have this other side of the business that's, for lack of a better term, keeping you afloat.
Yeah. Going through the economic times that we're going through now, mid 2024, I know agencies have been struggling. So many agencies that I talked to on this show or outside the show,
Yes.
because their clients are struggling. So the first thing they do is they pull the
Right.
marketing budgets. Now, the one thing I'm super glad you did was you made a distinction about book writing, because book writing is not passive anything.
No, it's not.
It's
No.
not passive and it's not really
No.
income either. So
No, it's not income either. You're right.
that's not what we're
You're right.
talking about
No.
here. I've got my book over there that, yeah, I've made a couple pennies off of, and that's it, right?
Maybe if you're lucky.
So we're talking about courses. We're talking about ebooks, I think, right? Can you
Yep.
give us some specific examples of, what kinds of mediums are we talking about? And Jen, some other very specific examples of the kinds of intellectual property an agency might have that they could turn into this kind of passive income.
So a couple of things. So to answer the question about what kinds of things you could sort of productize, for lack of a better term, is online courses, webinars, ebooks, anything that you can sell on your website. And truth be told, I'm in the process right now of writing the second edition of Spin Sucks, and I'm going to kind of follow in Joe Polizzi's footsteps and see if I can sell it on our website versus through Amazon. I don't know yet if it's going to work, but I'm going to try it because I've spent the last 10 years, 12 years building a community, building a subscriber base. We have it in schools now where they use it as a textbook. So my hypothesis is that, to use the fifth grader terms as they're going through science classes, my hypothesis is that we have a large enough audience that I might be able to skip Amazon. If it can't and it doesn't work, then of course I'll go over there as my plan B. But so setting that aside, just because I don't have the results yet and I don't know what to expect, but it is something that I'm going to test. Those are the kinds of things that you can do. So thinking about it from the perspective of what is tangible that I can sell through our website. It's a DIY something other. Like I have one coaching client that is doing a DIY strategy development program. Another client is doing like really short snippet videos that someone will buy for small businesses on how to do their own PR. So there's a lot of different ways that you can package it. And when you think about what you might sell or what your intellectual property is think about a few things. Number one, do you have a process that you use at your agency that is unique to your agency? And if so, that can be productized. When you're talking to prospects and they're typically too small for you, what are the things that they're asking for? I'm a communications professional. So in my business, they're asking for things like, can you write a news release and distribute it for us? I mean, yes, but you probably can't afford for us to do it, but I can teach you how to do it. Can you develop a strategy for us and let us teach us how to implement it? Absolutely. So be paying attention to the questions or the kinds of needs that prospects have that they may not want to or be able to pay you and your team to execute for them. Right now there's all this AI that's doing SEO. Can you take that and package it into something that's it's not great yet, but can you take sort of the AI that's doing SEO and package it into something that is great? So think about the kinds of things that you offer, the services that you offer that you can package into something that can just be sold over and over and over again.
Those are terrific examples. And I love the point about the book too, because
We'll see. Yeah.
if you're not going through Amazon or a traditional publisher, man, you get so much more money.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I mean, I went through the publisher. Yeah, we'll see. Well, ask me in a year.
Yeah. Right? We will
see.
definitely circle back to that.
Yeah.
Can you walk us through though, maybe some initial steps? Like if I was coming to you and said, this is what I want to do with my agency, what do you think some of my initial steps should be if I'm trying to figure out what knowledge I could share that could be structured and put into that kind of monetizable process? And I really love, by the way, your point about thinking about customers who aren't a good fit. First of all, that's a recurring theme on this show because that's a challenge for many startup agencies, right? You just want to take the revenue from wherever you can get it. I understand that. But once you get to a certain point where you can start to be more selective, this is a great avenue to think about how can I still help the people that are coming to me without having to sell them my time at a rate they can't afford. So what would those first steps do you think be?
I would answer that by saying first that I think many agency owners are really altruistic, and a lot of us go into business and say, you know, the small business market isn't um, nobody's helping them. And then as you grow your agency, you realize that nobody's helping them because they can't afford to pay you or they don't pay their
Yeah.
bills, or they say, well, let's try this for 3 months and see what happens. And you're like, really 3 months isn't enough time. So I think as you grow, as your agency grows, you become, you start to understand that. But at the same time, I think you can still be really altruistic and say, what are the types of things that we can do to help this small business achieve its marketing goals? So really think about it. And I would, if you came to me and said, okay, how do we think about this? The first thing I would have you do is write down everything that in the last 18 months a prospect has asked you to do. And maybe it's a client too. And maybe it's a client where it's not profitable, or you're, you know, a little fed up because they're asking for a Tesla on a Ford budget, you know. So think about, I would have you sort of think through those things and think about and write it down. Like, what kinds of things are we doing now? What kinds of things are we really good at doing? What kinds of things are we being asked to do that we don't necessarily want to do? You know, for us, that it might be social media engagement. Like, nobody wants to post on social media. So how do you package that into something
Yep.
for a small business to be able to do on their own?
Love those approaches, and I'm giggling because obviously so much of what you're saying is
Yeah.
incredibly true. And I also loved your early example of your course, not just as a story of how you saw success, but obviously I know everybody that was in the room with you, and I know they all have their own IP and their own courses and their books and amazing things, and yet they saw you achieve something that none of them had ever even come close to getting at. And I wonder if you could share some of the maybe the specific ideas of how that was different, because I'm imagining there are some different considerations when we're thinking about what we should and should not develop for these kinds of passive income opportunities. How do we know what's going to be effective and valuable? And I'm thinking maybe there might be some lessons from your experience.
Yes. One of the things I learned during that dinner is that most of the speakers, marketing professionals, influencers, experts that were in that room had done a couple of things. First, they had identified a pain point they thought that their audience had, may or may not be true, and then they built the content based on that. So there wasn't a feedback mechanism. There was a, I think this is a pain point and I think I can sell this, so I'm going to build it. And a lot of them spent a lot of money like producing really high-end products. You know, Jay Bear, I remember telling me he spent a lot of money to produce a really high-end online course, and like no one bought it. And so he didn't make back the money, he didn't even break even on it. And what we did differently is and I think this is advice I would give to anybody just starting out. Like, I couldn't get away with this today because we're so much further along, but this is how I would do it if you're just starting out. We sent an email to our subscribers and we asked this question: if you could spend an hour with Gini Dietrich, what would you talk about? That's it.
Ooh,
And what we did is, you know, we got everything. We got silly responses, we got funny responses, we got really serious responses. So what we did is it was just in a quick Google survey, so we could put it into a spreadsheet. And we took everything that people said. So some people said, well, I'd love to just go get a mani and pedi with her and drink some champagne. And some people said, let's go get some cupcakes. You know, so we got those silly responses and we sort of just packaged those over here. And then we got some really thoughtful, interesting responses. And so what we did is once we closed the survey, we had everything in a spreadsheet. And then we took that spreadsheet and we said, okay, if somebody, I can't remember the exact numbers, I would have to look, but if, let's just say for argument's sake, that if somebody responded with more than 100 characters, they're going to go into this bucket. If somebody responded between 101 and 250 characters, they're going to go into this bucket. And if they responded more than 250 characters, as in typed characters, then they go into this bucket. And then we took those 3 buckets and we went through and we said, okay, are there any trends that we can see? And we started to see what the trends were between the people who spent a lot of time answering that question and the people who didn't spend any time answering that question. And we found that there were 3 areas that people wanted to know about. And at this, this was 2014. So it's been a decade. But at the time, people couldn't figure out how to marry what for us has later become the peso model, but they couldn't figure out how to marry the 4 different media types. They couldn't figure out how to marry paid, earned, shared, and owned media. And their biggest challenge was, how do we create content? What is content marketing? And how do we marry that with media relations? How do we marry it with link building and SEO? And so when we saw that trend, and I knew in the back of my mind that because of the process that we used internally at our agency, which was the peso model, I knew that that was going to get us strategically closer to where we wanted to be. So we took that and we said, okay, we're going to create an online course that shows people how to take content and media relations and put them together. And what I did is I built the first lesson and I did it as a webinar. So every Wednesday for 4 weeks, you showed up at the same time. I presented the content. There was for 45 minutes, there was a Q&A afterwards, and then you'd go on to your week. So a couple of things. One is because I was building the content as we went, I was able to take feedback as it came in. Like people would say, I didn't really understand that, or that was too fast, or I need you to spend more time doing this. But it also allowed me to continue to run my agency because I only had to create a 45-minute webinar every week instead of trying to do it all at once and make sure it was professional and make sure it was, high end and that I'd spend a bunch of money. So literally it was a webinar every week. And then I would take the feedback that people gave me in the Q&A and I would use that to create the following week. And so by the end of 4 weeks, we had something usable. And then at the end, I asked for feedback. I took a survey, had everybody take a survey, give me the feedback. And then I sent it off to a producer I found on Upwork. And he took all of that and he broke it into bite-sized. So the 4 week hour webinars, that's what we sold for $199 and made $250,000. That was our first thing. Then I took that and hired this producer off of Upwork, and he made it into bite-sized lessons. So it wasn't a 45-minute lesson. It was a 8 to 10 minute lesson. And there were, 16 of them, 20 of them. And he produced it and it looked nice and all those kinds of things. But that was the second edition of it. So we had our beta and then we had our full launch. And the full launch, then I think we sold for $499. So it allowed us to sort of stair step into it and build something that we knew people wanted because we were building it as they told us what they wanted. That was a really long answer, but that's what we did.
No, that was brilliant. That was a brilliant answer. Everyone's going to go back and listen to that a couple times. I literally was taking notes, and I have to say, you probably inspired Marcus Sheridan's "They Ask You Answer" because that's literally what you did. You asked the question, and you listened to it. It's very lean startup style, and I love it. You pulled the audience, found out what were they actually wanting to know, and rather than us build it and see, well, is this really what they want? No. Let's build an MVP, improve it, test it. That's amazing. Love it.
And it works.
So let's say we do that. And, let's say I'm an agency and I'm pulling my audience and maybe I've got 2 or 3 routes that I might go, right? 2 or 3 pain points or solutions that I might talk to. How do you think you might go about identifying which one actually has the most potential for generating actual passive income?
Honestly, I would spend time on the one that you're most passionate about, because you are going to be spending time. It is going to be some work. So I would spend time with the topic that you're most passionate about. Not to say you can't do the second topic later, but I would prioritize it based on, what I'm really excited about how AI is going to affect our industry. So I'm going to focus on that versus how to post on social media, right? Whatever it happens to be. So that's what I would do, is just do it based on what you're most passionate about. So because it'll make it easier for you.
I love that answer. I couldn't agree more. Folks, we're talking with Jeannie about the ways that you can diversify the revenue that's coming into your agency and have some safety nets in place in case of economic or other issues. And I've got several more questions for, but before I get to those, I've got a quick message I'd like to share from Kim Garst.
I personally love Agora Pulse. It's been a life changer in so many ways. One, anytime you have a tool that is kind of a one-stop shop from a management perspective, it's awesome. But some of the things I love about Agora Pulse is the ability to tag conversations or to people so that you can follow up with those people and you kind of know who they are. You know, the other thing I love is being able to see all the conversations, previous conversations, specifically in Twitter. And of course, now that you can schedule to Instagram, that's awesome. So I'm super thrilled about that. I have used a lot of different tools, pretty much all of them, over the course of the time that I've been active in social media. And when I first started using Agora Pulse and I realized that it had so many of the same functions of some of the other tools, but it went deeper. You know, it gave you more ability to do, things that some of the others just didn't have that capability. So I'm a huge fan.
So, Jeannie, that was
such a good
great
testimonial.
Oh, I know.
That was great. Holy cow. And I agree, like, whoa, on the Instagram.
I know, right? Kim singing is the best. She's terrific. I
That's
haven't seen her in
fantastic.
many, many years. Love doing that with her. I was there when we filmed that in San Diego. I'm wondering if you could share another example. We've got this great example of the course that you created. Let's kind of prove this wasn't, a magical kind of one-time thing, right? And these could be examples of your own or other agencies that you've seen. Any other success stories that you could share?
Earlier this year, a couple of things. One is that this year is the 10-year anniversary of the launch of the peso model. And so I wanted to provide something new and interesting around the peso model for the industry every month. And in January, we relaunched the peso model certification. So that was that. In February, I'm not going to remember every month, but as we've gone through the months, we've done something new. And I was stuck at June, and I was trying to figure out what we should do for June, because we had some stuff for the fall and winter, but we didn't have anything for these summer months. And a girlfriend sent me an email and she said, I'm trying to decide if I should go through the peso model certification or if I should do the story brand certification. And for me, I was kind of like, well, the peso model certification is only $1,250. And I think the story brand certification is like 30 grand. And she was like, great. Like, what are you trying to decide? But she said, if you had a process where you taught agency owners the peso model framework and then how to sell it to their clients, I think I would buy that. And I was like, really? And she's like, yeah. So I sent an email to our subscribers and I said, if we had this kind of program, would you buy it? And it was like, bong, 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 bong. So I literally launched it 2 weeks later, literally. But what I said is anybody who's in right now gets it for at least 50% off, because it's not built yet. Like we're going to build it as we go. You have to spend a year with me. And every month you have to show up for a monthly coaching call. You have to give me feedback as we go, because like I said, we're going to build it as we go. And then I want you to be able to serve as a testimonial at the end. And like everyone was like, yes. So I did it for 10 grand. And I probably in retrospect should have charged more because we had so many people interested. But again, it was wait a second, listening to something that, a prospect said and thinking about it from the perspective of, I could actually do that. So let's just do it. And as entrepreneurs, that's what we do, right? Like, let's do it and see what happens. And so that's what we did. So we launched it in June. And, we'll have our first graduating class next May. So I will let you know again when we talk about the SpinSucks second edition. We'll have a second class that'll be going through it. So I'll let you know those results then too.
That is fantastic. Okay, so yeah, first of all, we're making that a date. We're going to come back next year. We're going to talk about SpinSucks second edition and how that launch went. We're going to talk about this new certification, and obviously, everything you do is super easy. There are never any
Yes.
issues. It's
No.
never hard.
Uh-uh.
But for the other agencies out there, like myself, who are a little more challenged, what are some of the things in the pitfalls that we might have to look forward to, particularly when it comes to trying to create passive income? How do we overcome some of those pitfalls?
Because I believe so strongly in every agency should have passive income of some sort, I don't want to dissuade you from doing it. That said, there are some things like it's a different type of business. We're accustomed to client service, we're accustomed to referrals, we're accustomed to word of mouth, we're accustomed to sitting down with usually a business owner or a CEO and talking through their pain points and then going back and saying, okay, here are the things that we can do. Here's a proposal and here's how much it'll cost. We're really accustomed to doing that. This is a different business and you can't treat it the same. You have to treat it like it's an e-commerce business, because that's what it is. Like, you're selling product, and even though it may not be tangible in the same way that a book might be or a product, a widget might be, it's still a product service or a product business. So you have to learn that. And with that comes like, what kind of e-commerce do I put on the website, and what kind of shopping cart do I use, and what kind of credit card processing, and how do I price for it so that I'm incorporating credit card fees into it. Like, you have to think about all of those things, and it's like your own agency. You learn things as you go along, for sure, but those are the types of things that I think are probably the most challenging as you do this, because there aren't a lot of businesses out there doing it. Like, if you want to launch a line of t-shirts, you can just do that through Etsy or through Amazon, and they handle all of that stuff for you, right? But when you're doing this on your own, you have to learn all of that. You have to incorporate all of that. You have to figure out how it all works. You have to understand, if somebody wants a refund, what that process is. If somebody has gone through your course and decides they didn't like it, do you give them their money back? Like, you have to figure out all of those policies too. So it's not that it's necessarily a pitfall. It's just a different business. And so you have to learn how to run a second kind of business.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say, because everything that you're talking about isn't hard. There's simply things that need to be thought through.
Yep.
And if you've never done them before, then
Yep.
you need to take the time to learn, explore, talk to people. If you've installed WordPress and you've installed WooCommerce on a WordPress site, then setting up e-commerce is not going to be challenging for you. But if you've never done it before, then you've got to explore the various e-commerce plugins and figure out how do they work. And and it's not expensive either.
It's not.
I just mentioned WooCommerce. That's free if you've got a WordPress site. You might want to pay for one of the other, upgrades, but this isn't hard. It's not rocket science, folks. You can do this.
You can do it.
So I also want to know about, though, how you're distributing it. First of all, it sounds like you've got a great subscriber list, which is fantastic. Kudos to you. I imagine you probably grew that list through normal content marketing kinds of means. Was that your only channel for distribution? Did you see success using social media or any other channels?
We have not seen success using social media. In the beginning, because we had such a vibrant blog and so many subscribers to the blog, that was really where most of it was generated from. Today, we, and like I said at the beginning, we've spent a decade doing this. So it's not like you can just go, I'm going to try it and make $250,000. Like, there are things you have to do. You have to build an audience. You have to build subscribers. You have to do it on something that you own, so that you're not relying on the social networks or Medium or Substack to do that for you. So you have to do those things. Today, I would say if I were starting this all over again and I didn't have a subscriber base, I would be solely focused on email, and I would be using the social networks to help people, to build awareness among target audiences with our thought leadership, and then drive them back to subscribe to our email. That's what I would focus on. And I would just work on building that subscriber list as much as I can, as fast as I can. You don't want to do things like buy leads and all that kind of stuff, because that tends to get you in trouble with GDPR and other California laws and the like. But if you can do it organically, if you're really thoughtful about your content, and you can absolutely use LinkedIn. LinkedIn right now is on fire. Use a LinkedIn newsletter, use your LinkedIn personal page, and start building your own thought leadership. And at the end of every post, drive people back to subscribe to your list, so that you're doing that. And even if you only have 200 subscribers, if 20% of them buy something, you're sitting pretty in a pretty nice spot. So don't worry about, I've got to have 100,000 subscribers and I've got it. Like, that's not the case at all. If you can get 20 people to pay $500 for an online course, you have a really nice start to something big.
Yeah, and I appreciate the disclaimer that we shouldn't go into this expecting to make $250,000, particularly not on our first try. You
Right.
are an extremely successful speaker and writer and author, and so you developed an audience over time.
Right.
You're appearing on stages like Content Marketing World, right? So you're in front of hundreds of people on a platform where a well-known conference is espousing you as an expert. So they're naturally attuned to follow you. And that's one of the many ways that you've grown an audience. For those of you listening, if you haven't been focusing on an email list, you've really just been focusing on sales and prospects. Do everything that Gini just mentioned, have those upsells, content upgrades. So you've got people coming to your blog, you're using social media to drive what conversation traffic you can. I mean, granted, social media today is not what it was in 2014. You're not going to get the traffic that we used to get.
Nope.
No,
Nope.
my GA hates me for that, but
I
still,
know.
you do what you can. You do what you can. So speaking of Google Analytics, I'm wondering, and I just kind of want to touch on this, measuring success. How are you measuring the impact of these kinds of initiatives? How do you track the success and the profitability of IP-based processes?
Well, the nice thing about IP-based processes is it's all profit, right? You build it once, and I mean, you have to sell enough to make up for your time and whatever you put into the production of it. But if you go back to the example of our very first online course where we did 4 webinars 4 weeks in a row, it was an hour. Well, it's probably 2 hours of my time to create the content, an hour of my time to every week, an hour of my time to present it, and then an hour of time. So let's call it 5 hours a week for 4 weeks. So 20 hours of my time. And let's just say, for argument's sake, that I bill $500 an hour. Okay, well, we made $250,000, so extraordinarily profitable, right? It's not the same level of profit that it is in your agency, because it just sells itself. And, I remember I was skiing with a girlfriend of mine probably 12 or 13 years ago, and we were on the lift, and she's on her phone, and she goes, "Huh, I just made $500. And I was like, "What? What did you do?" And it was this kind of thing. She's an art therapist, and she had created a package for parents to give to their children, in the times that that the therapist wasn't available, but that they were having a meltdown or needed some space or whatever it happened to be. And she sold it through her website. And literally, we were on the lift going up. She's like, "Huh, it's only $500. So it's that when you talk about profitability, that's what it does. Is you're not. And that's why it's called passive income, is because you build it once and then it just sells itself. You can sell it through social media ads. You can sell it through your email. You can sell it, on stage, wherever it happens to be. There are lots of different ways that you can sell these products, and it just does its thing. So it's gigantic profit.
So true, and such a great experience. I mean, I gotta tell you, if you guys haven't done anything like this before, to just be out shopping or doing your thing and your phone dings a couple times with money coming in, it's
It's great.
It's really, really
So
liberating Feel it.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Again, particularly if you're in a situation like many of us in the economy today where, clients aren't paying their bills and new clients aren't coming in. To have this kind of revenue coming in on the side is such a fantastic option. So thank you for sharing that. I want to know, just finally, do you have any final tips or advice that you might give agency leaders who are thinking about starting and monetizing their knowledge and creating passive income streams? And while you're thinking about that, I also want to point out one other thing that you said that really struck me, which was that you only spent a couple of hours, you think, in hindsight, creating each one of those webinars. And I appreciate that, because I wanted to stress that everything we're talking about is knowledge that you
Right.
already possess
Right.
as an agency owner. We're
Right.
not talking about going out and researching machine language so that you can teach on the level of a Chris Penn. No, 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 no.
Right.
That's what Chris
No.
is for, right?
No.
You're teaching
Yeah.
stuff that
10
you already
people
know
to
how to do.
Chris. Yeah. 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 I think it's really easy to be overwhelmed by all of this. And it's really easy to sit here and be like, oh, okay, that sounds interesting. And then just get mired back into our day-to-day jobs. So I would say to you, don't be overwhelmed by it. Choose one thing and say, you know what? By October 1st, by January 2nd, by Valentine's Day, choose whatever date makes sense to you. I'm going to launch X, and then back it out and say, okay, if I do it really easy like Jenny did, I'm going to send an email, or I'm going to ask my social media followers. I'm going to put a poll on LinkedIn. Whatever it happens to be, to get some feedback so that you know what the pain point is. And then say, I'm going to do that by, 90 days in advance of my launch date. And then you just start to build it. And don't let all of the pretty shiny things overwhelm you. I think what we did, if I remember correctly, is I had to get a Stripe account so that we could process credit cards. And that took a little bit of time, because you have to prove who you are and show your incorporation documents and all that kind of stuff, tax ID, social security number, all that kind of stuff. So that takes probably 3 or 4 weeks. So, figure out and Stripe is pretty much what everybody uses. So figure that piece of it out pretty quickly. And then we just added SamCart on. So I didn't have to incorporate it into the website immediately. SamCart is a shopping cart. But it does it on its own. So I didn't have to go through the process of trying to figure out, do I need WooCommerce or do I need Shopify? And how does this all work into my WordPress site? It just sits on its own and processes the credit cards for you. So do it as easy as you can. And because it's so easy to create one 45-minute presentation every week versus 4 45-minute presentations before you launch, do it like that, and do it as a webinar. Invite feedback. Tell people that they're going to pay less because it's a beta, because you're testing it out, and they're going to be excited about it. So don't let things be overwhelming. I know how hard it is, and I know that I do the same thing, because clients come first. But if you say to yourself, I'm going to do this and I'm going to launch it by this date, and you start to break down the pieces that you need to do into tiny steps, you'll get it done.
Terrific advice. I just want to clarify, the webinars themselves, were you charging for them, those initial webinars?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. How much
Yeah.
were you charging?
That was
at
the
that
$199
point?
product.
Okay, so they'd have to pay up front, and then they could attend
Yep.
each of the weekly webinars.
Yep.
Got it.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
This has been
Yeah.
so cool, Gini. Oh my gosh. I have a page of notes. Folks, I know we're going to listen
Do
to
you
this a
really?
couple times. Oh, I really do. This is so cool. Because I've been making products for a long time, but most of them have not worked. I'll be transparent about that. My best products were all about blogging, and nobody wants to blog. That was the real issue I ran into. I should have been talking to my audience more, because they'll say, yeah, I need to blog, but I don't want to blog.
I don't want to.
And I can't make people want to blog. I can make them blog really, really well. I can really improve your writing, but if you don't want to do it, you're not going to pay me money.
Yep. It's true.
So thank you for that. For
You're
folks who
welcome.
want to learn more about you, we'll link to the peso model, but for those who really want to get into things and learn from you, where should they go?
Spinsucks.com. It's easy.
Fantastic. Thank you, Gini. Thank you, everyone, for listening. That's all the time we've got for today, friends. But don't forget to find the Social Pulse podcast Agency Edition on Apple and drop us a review. We'd love to know what you think. Until next time. Thank you for listening to another episode of Social Pulse Podcast Agency Edition, hosted by Mike Alton and powered by AgoraPulse, the #1 rated social media management solution, which you can learn more about at agorapulse.com. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe on your favorite podcast player and be sure to leave us a review. Your feedback is important to us.